The champagne flute shattered against the hardwood floor of Powell's City of Books, spraying glass across my new heels and the signed copies of my debut novel stacked carefully on the table beside me. My sister Victoria stood 3 feet away, her perfectly manicured hands still extended from the accidental bump, her smile sharp enough to cut paper. "Oops," she said, loud enough for the gathered crowd to hear. "I'm so clumsy tonight." Must be the excitement of watching my little sister pretend to be a real author. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The room fell silent. 75 people, friends, colleagues, book bloggers, members of the press, all watching as my book launch transformed into a public execution. My publisher Claire Hendricks moved toward us, but Victoria wasn't finished. She picked up one of my books, turning it over in her hands like she was examining spoiled fruit at a grocery store. "Nobody will buy your trash," she announced, her voice carrying across the bookstore's reading room. "I've been in this industry for 12 years. I know what sells, and this?" She dropped the book back onto the table with a thud. "This is vanity publishing at its finest. Our mother and I tried to tell you, Emma, but you never listen." I stood frozen, my throat closing around words that wouldn't come. This was supposed to be my night. After 3 years of writing in coffee shops before my magazine shifts, after 2 years of rejections from agents including Victoria herself, after finally finding Claire at a small independent press who believed in my story, this was supposed to be my vindication. Instead, my own sister was destroying me in front of everyone who mattered in Portland's tight-knit literary community. "Tori, that's enough," my brother Nathan's voice cut through the tension, but Victoria turned on him too. "Stay out of this, Nathan. You've been enabling her delusions for years, telling her she's talented when she's just wasting her life. Someone needs to give her a reality check." She addressed the crowd again. "I tried to represent her, you know. Read her manuscript as a favor. It was unpublishable. I told her to trunk it and start over, but she shopped it around until she found some desperate indie press willing to take her money. I didn't pay to publish my book," I finally managed, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Of course you'd say that." Victoria laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Look, everyone, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being honest, which is what family does. This book will sell maybe 200 copies, mostly to relatives who feel obligated. By next month, it'll be remaindered. By next year, Emma will be back to writing clickbait articles about celebrity diets, and we can all stop pretending this was ever going anywhere." She grabbed her designer purse and walked toward the exit, pausing only to look back at our mother, who stood near the door. "Come on, Mom. We have dinner reservations." My mother, Diane Collins, looked at me for a long moment. I silently begged her to stay, to say something, to choose me for once. Instead, she adjusted her scarf and followed Victoria out of the bookstore, leaving me standing in a puddle of champagne and shattered glass, holding a book my sister had just declared worthless in front of everyone I needed to impress. The silence stretched unbearably. Someone coughed. I heard whispers starting, phones being pulled out, probably already texting about the scene they'd just witnessed. My face burned with humiliation so intense I thought I might actually combust right there among the shelves of better books by better writers who probably had better sisters. Then Claire Hendricks stepped forward, her expression unreadable. She held her phone in one hand, the screen glowing with what looked like spreadsheets or data. The publisher who'd taken a chance on me when no one else would, who'd fought her editorial board to acquire my manuscript, who'd promised me that good stories always found their readers. "Emma," she said quietly, but her voice carried in the awful silence. "Before we continue this evening, there's something everyone here needs to see." The morning after the book launch, I woke up on Nathan's couch with dried mascara crusting my eyelashes and my phone buzzing with notifications I couldn't bear to check. The champagne smell had soaked into my dress, now draped over a chair like a flag of surrender. Through the window, Portland's gray sky matched my mood perfectly. Nathan appeared with coffee, his teacher instincts knowing better than to offer platitudes. He simply set the mug on the table and sat in the armchair across from me, waiting until I was ready to talk. Claire called, he said finally. 3 times. Julia texted. Said the writing group wants to meet today if you're up for it. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself. I can't face anyone. They all saw Victoria destroy me. They all heard her say my book was trash, that I paid to publish it, that I'd sell 200 copies to relatives out of pity. Emma. Nathan leaned forward. Did you actually hear what Claire said after Victoria left? I had fled so quickly, desperate to escape the stares and whispers, that I honestly couldn't remember. The whole evening had blurred into a nightmare of humiliation. I'd grabbed my coat and run, leaving boxes of my books behind, leaving the signing table set up, leaving everything. She told the crowd that your book had already sold 47,000 copies in pre-sales alone, Nathan said quietly. She had the real-time sales dashboard pulled up on her phone. Showed everyone. Your book hit number 3 on the indie bestseller list yesterday morning, 12 hours before the launch even started. The words didn't compute. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. That's not possible. It's very possible. Claire's been trying to tell you all week, but you were so nervous about the launch, so worried about everything being perfect, that you weren't checking your email. He pulled out his own phone, navigated to something, then handed it to me. The screen showed Claire's email from 4 days ago with the subject line, urgent, we need to talk about your numbers. I'd seen it in my inbox, assumed it was about some problem with the venue or the catering, and flagged it to read later. Later had never come. I opened it now, my hands shaking. The email contained graphs, charts, data I barely understood, but that painted a clear picture. My book had been climbing bestseller lists for 2 weeks. Early reviews from trade publications had sparked word-of-mouth momentum. Book bloggers with massive followings had discovered it and posted enthusiastic recommendations. A popular book talk creator had featured it in a video that went viral. The pre-sale numbers had shocked everyone at Beacon Press, including Claire. Your publisher was trying to tell you that you had a genuine hit on your hands, Nathan continued. That's what she was about to announce last night when Victoria showed up and derailed everything. Claire wanted it to be a surprise, a celebration. She'd invited media specifically to cover what she knew would be a major success story, a debut author from Portland breaking through in a big way. I scrolled through more emails I'd neglected. One from Claire's marketing director about securing additional print runs. Another about foreign rights inquiries from publishers in 6 countries. A message from a film producer's assistant requesting contact information to discuss adaptation rights. My book wasn't failing. It was succeeding beyond anything I'd imagined possible. And Victoria had tried to convince everyone, including me, that it was worthless trash nobody would buy. Why would she do that? I whispered. She's my sister. Nathan's expression hardened. I've been thinking about that all night. Victoria has always needed to be the successful one, the important one in the family. You pursuing writing was fine as long as it stayed a hobby, something she could patronize. But you actually succeeding, potentially becoming more successful than her? That threatens everything her identity is built on. He stood, paced to the window. Remember when I got my teaching job at Lincoln High? She spent that entire Thanksgiving explaining how teaching was a fallback career for people who couldn't make it in the real world. Remember when Mom started her pottery classes after retirement? Victoria convinced her it was a waste of money, that she'd never be good enough to sell anything. She can't handle anyone in this family succeeding at something she hasn't approved. The pieces started fitting together. Victoria's refusal to represent me, claiming my manuscript was unpublishable. Her insistence that I was wasting my time, that I should focus on stable journalism work. The way she'd undermined my confidence at every family gathering, always with a smile, always framed as helpful concern. I need to talk to Claire, I said, standing up. The blanket fell away, and I realized I was still wearing yesterday's ruined dress. I need to fix this. Everyone at that launch thinks I'm a fraud now. They think I paid to publish some vanity project. Victoria poisoned everything. Or, Nathan said carefully, Everyone at that launch saw your sister have a very public meltdown and then watched your publisher present actual sales data proving she was wrong. Emma, you ran before you saw how it played out. Most people stayed. Claire did the signing without you, told everyone you'd been called away for a family emergency, and sold every single book in the building. Julia said people were taking photos of the sales numbers on Claire's phone. The whole thing went viral on Twitter. He showed me his phone again. The literary Twitter community had exploded with posts about the incident. But instead of mocking me, they were eviscerating Victoria. Screenshots of her public tirade were circulating with commentary about professional jealousy and family toxicity. Several prominent authors had weighed in, sharing their own stories of relatives who'd tried to sabotage their success. The hashtag Emma Collins book was trending, and not in the way Victoria had intended. My phone buzzed again, and this time I looked at the notifications. Messages from writers I'd never met offering support. DMs from book bloggers wanting to interview me. An email from a literary magazine asking if I'd write an essay about navigating family dynamics as an artist. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The attention was overwhelming, but beneath it ran a current of something darker that made my stomach twist. Victoria hadn't just embarrassed herself. She'd revealed something calculated and cruel in front of witnesses, and I needed to understand why. This wasn't a momentary lapse or sibling rivalry gone too far. The way she'd spoken, the specifics she'd chosen, the timing, all of it felt orchestrated. I'm taking a shower, I told Nathan. Then I'm going to Claire's office. I need to see those numbers myself, understand what's actually happening with my book. An hour later, I sat across from Claire Hendricks in her office at Beacon Press, surrounded by stacks of manuscripts and the smell of fresh coffee. She'd printed out sales reports, reviews, and market analysis, spreading them across her desk like evidence in a trial. Your book released officially yesterday, Claire began, but we've been tracking pre-sale momentum for 3 weeks. The initial orders from independent bookstores were strong, better than we expected for a debut literary novel. Then the early reader copies we sent to book bloggers started generating buzz. One post led to another, and suddenly we had organic word-of-mouth building faster than anything we could have purchased with advertising. She pulled up a graph on her computer, the ascending line sharp and steep. By the time of your launch, we'd already ordered a second printing. The publisher wanted to announce it last night as a surprise. We'd never seen numbers like this from a first-time author with no platform. It was supposed to be your victory moment. Instead, Victoria made sure everyone thought I was a failure, I said quietly. Claire's expression hardened. About that. I did some asking around this morning. Called a few colleagues, including someone at Sterling and Associates where your sister works. Emma, did you know Victoria read your manuscript when you first queried her agency? She told me it was unpublishable. Said the writing was amateurish and the story had no commercial appeal. That's interesting, because according to my contact, Victoria presented your manuscript at her agency's acquisitions meeting. She pitched it hard, said it had bestseller potential, asked for approval to offer representation. Her boss loved it, told her to move forward with the offer. The information hit me like cold water. She lied to me. She told me to my face that it was terrible, that I should give up and focus on journalism. She lied because the day before her boss approved the offer, she found out you'd already signed with me, Claire continued. One of her junior agents had mentioned seeing the deal announcement in Publishers Marketplace. Victoria apparently went ballistic in the office, threw things, said I'd stolen her client. But Emma, you weren't her client. She'd rejected you. My mind reeled, retracing the timeline. I'd queried Victoria first because she was family, because I'd trusted her professional opinion. When she'd crushed my hopes, I'd spent 2 months revising, questioning everything, before finally sending the manuscript to a handful of smaller presses including Beacon. Claire had responded within a week with enthusiasm that felt like salvation after Victoria's dismissal. Why wouldn't she just offer to represent me if she actually liked it? I asked. Claire hesitated, then pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. This is where things get complicated. I wasn't sure whether to show you this, but given what happened last night, I think you need to see it. Inside were printouts of emails, metadata visible at the top showing they'd been forwarded from someone at Sterling and Associates. The correspondence was between Victoria and several publishers, including 2 of the major houses in New York. My manuscript title appeared in every message. "She shopped your book without your permission," I said, the realization dawning. While she was telling me it was unpublishable, she was trying to sell it herself. Not exactly. She was trying to tank it. Claire pointed to specific passages. Look at how she describes the manuscript in these queries. She calls it derivative, poorly paced, with an unlikable protagonist. She compares it unfavorably to books that failed commercially. These aren't pitch letters. They're poison pills. She was making sure that when you eventually found another agent or tried to query publishers directly, the major houses would already have rejection records for your book. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Victoria hadn't just rejected my work. She'd actively sabotaged my chances of success elsewhere, all while maintaining the facade of the concerned older sister trying to protect me from disappointment. "How did you get these?" I managed. "The junior agent who mentioned seeing your deal announcement contacted me last month. She'd figured out what Victoria had done, felt guilty about being part of that agency, and wanted to make sure you knew the truth. She's since left Sterling and Associates. Apparently, Victoria's been doing this to multiple clients, suppressing projects she views as competitive threats to her own authors or to her ego." Claire pulled out more documents. This writer, Bethany Morrison, had a memoir Victoria represented 3 years ago. Strong concept, beautiful writing, multiple publishers interested. Then Victoria suddenly dropped her, claimed the market had shifted and the book wasn't viable anymore. Bethany later found out Victoria had been telling publishers the memoir contained fabricated elements, poisoning every deal that was forming. Another file emerged. Kevin O'Brien, thriller writer. Victoria signed him, then sat on his manuscript for 18 months while the genre trend he was writing cooled off. By the time she finally submitted it, publishers said the market was oversaturated. Kevin's career never recovered. "She destroys people," I said, the pattern crystallizing. "Anyone she perceives as a threat or anyone she can't control. The junior agent, her name is Amber Lee, she's willing to talk to you. She kept records of everything because she suspected Victoria might try to retaliate against her for leaving. But Emma, there's something else." Claire's voice dropped. "Your mother called my office this morning." My heart sank. "What did she want?" "She said she was concerned about the attention your book was getting, that it might not be healthy for you, that success could change you in negative ways. She asked if we'd considered delaying the paperback release or limiting the marketing push. She said it was for your own good, to protect you from the pressures of the industry." The betrayal cut deeper than Victoria's public attack. My mother, who'd raised me, who'd supposedly loved me, was actively working to undermine my success. Not out of concern, but because Victoria had convinced her that my achievement somehow threatened the family hierarchy. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her that you're a professional author with a contract, that publishing decisions are between you, me, and the press, and that she should discuss her concerns with you directly." She hung up on me. I sat back in the chair, the weight of it all pressing down. This wasn't just about a book launch gone wrong. This was about years of systematic undermining, about a family structure that required me to stay small so Victoria could remain large. Every time I'd doubted my writing, every moment I'd questioned whether I had talent, it hadn't been imposter syndrome. It had been the result of deliberate psychological warfare waged by people who were supposed to love me. "What do I do?" I asked Claire. "How do I fix this?" "You don't fix it. You document it, you protect yourself, and you let the success of your work speak for itself." She handed me a business card. "This is Marcus Reeves. He's an attorney who specializes in publishing law and author rights. I think you need to talk to him about Victoria's sabotage and about protecting yourself from future interference. What she did, shopping your manuscript without permission and deliberately poisoning deals, that's not just unethical. It might be legally actionable. I took the card, my hand steadier than I expected. The shame and humiliation from last night were transforming into something sharper, more focused. Victoria had bet on my silence, on my tendency to avoid conflict, on my lifelong habit of making myself smaller to keep the peace. She'd miscalculated badly. Marcus Reeves had an office that looked like a library had merged with a legal firm, books lining every wall, contracts stacked in precise piles across a mahogany desk. He listened to my story without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression growing more serious as I detailed Victoria's sabotage attempts. "The emails Claire showed you, those are gold," he said when I finished. "Literary agents have a fiduciary duty to act in their clients' best interests. What your sister did, submitting your work without permission and intentionally misrepresenting it to publishers, that violates multiple professional ethics standards. The fact that she did this to other writers suggests a pattern that could interest the Association of Authors' Representatives." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "But here's what concerns me more. Your mother's call to your publisher, trying to limit your book's success, that combined with your sister's public attack, suggests coordinated interference. Has anyone else in your family been contacting people in your professional life?" I thought about it, then remembered something odd from 2 weeks ago. My uncle Richard, my mother's brother, he called my former editor at the magazine where I used to work. Asked if I'd been reliable, if I'd ever missed deadlines or fabricated sources. My old editor mentioned it casually when we met for coffee, thought it was strange but figured he was doing some kind of family reference check. Marcus wrote that down. "What reason did he give your editor for asking?" "Something about a family trust, making sure I was financially responsible before inheritance decisions were made. But my grandfather died 6 years ago. There is no trust. So he was conducting what amounts to a background investigation designed to uncover anything that could be used against you professionally." Marcus set down his pen. "Emma, I think we need to look at this more broadly. Your sister's behavior at the book launch, that was a tactical error born from desperation. She'd been working behind the scenes to ensure your failure, and when your book succeeded anyway, she panicked and showed her hand publicly. Now the question is, what else has she been doing that we don't know about yet?" The thought made my skin crawl. I'd spent years confiding in Victoria about my writing struggles, my rejection letters, my hopes for publication. Every piece of information I'd shared could have been weaponized against me. "I want to hire you," I said. "I need to know what she's done and how to protect myself going forward. Before you do that, there's something you should know. This kind of investigation, it's going to uncover things you might not want to find. Family members, especially siblings, often know where the deepest vulnerabilities are. If we start pulling threads, we might discover that this goes back further than your writing career. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Nathan's comment from this morning, about how Victoria had undermined his teaching career and our mother's pottery hobby. About the pattern of needing to be the only successful one in the family. I'm prepared. Whatever she's done, I'd rather know than spend the rest of my life wondering when the next attack will come. Marcus nodded and pulled out a contract. "Then let's start with a forensic examination of your digital footprint. Emails, social media, any platform where you discussed your writing or shared work in progress. We'll also subpoena Victoria's professional communications through the proper channels, and I'll reach out to Amber Lee about her records. This is going to take time, probably several weeks to compile everything." I signed the retainer agreement, watching my signature loop across the page. A year ago, I couldn't have afforded an attorney like Marcus. But Claire had been right about the success of my book. The advance I'd received, combined with the royalties starting to accumulate from those 47,000 pre-sale copies, meant I finally had resources to fight back. Walking out of Marcus's office, I felt my phone vibrate with a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma Collins?" The voice was female, young, nervous. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Bethany Morrison. Claire Hendricks gave me your number. I'm the writer whose memoir Victoria sabotaged 3 years ago. I heard about what happened at your launch, and I think we need to talk. There are things about your sister that you don't know yet, things she's done that are much worse than killing book deals. We agreed to meet at the Writers' Haven Cafe in an hour. I called Nathan to let him know where I'd be, then headed toward the coffee shop where my writing group had spent countless Wednesday evenings workshopping pages and supporting each other's dreams. Bethany was waiting at a corner table, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and an edge of wariness that spoke to hard-won survival instincts. She had a folder in front of her, thick with documents. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure if I'd ever tell anyone this story, but seeing what Victoria did to you at your launch, watching her try to destroy you in public the same way she destroyed me in private, I realized I can't stay quiet anymore." She opened the folder, revealing printed emails, contract drafts, and what looked like financial statements. Victoria didn't just tank my memoir deal. She stole content from my manuscript and sold it to another client, a writer with a bigger platform who she thought could execute the concept better. The other writer probably didn't even know the ideas weren't original. Victoria just presented them as creative direction, as her brilliant editorial vision. "That's plagiarism," I said, stunned. "It's worse than that. The book that used my material became a bestseller. Made the New York Times list, won an award, got optioned for film. Meanwhile, I couldn't sell my memoir anywhere because Victoria had already poisoned the market by telling publishers it was fabricated. When I confronted her, she threatened to sue me for breach of contract, claiming I'd violated the non-disclosure agreement by discussing her editorial process. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I had to let it go." Bethany's hands shook slightly as she organized the papers. "But I kept everything. Every email where Victoria discussed my manuscript. Every message where she praised the concept before she stole it. Every communication with the other author where you can see Victoria feeding her my ideas. I kept it all because someday I knew Victoria would do this to someone else, and that person might have the resources to fight back." She pushed the folder across the table to me. "Claire told me about your book's success, about your publisher supporting you. You have something I didn't have, Emma. You have proof of Victoria's sabotage, witnesses to her public meltdown, and money for legal representation. If you're willing to go after her, I'll testify to everything. I'll provide all of this as evidence. But I need to know you're serious about following through, because once we start this, Victoria will come after both of us with everything she has." I looked at the folder, at the documentation of another writer's destroyed dreams, and thought about Kevin O'Brien, about Amber Lee leaving her job rather than continuing to enable Victoria's cruelty, about all the other writers who might have been silenced or sabotaged without ever knowing why their careers had stalled. "I'm serious," I said. "But I think we need more than just the two of us. If Victoria's been doing this systematically, there have to be other victims. We need to find them." Bethany's expression shifted from nervous to determined. "I know at least 3 other writers who had strange experiences with Victoria. One of them is fairly prominent now, might be willing to speak out if she knows she's not alone. There's also a message board for writers who've been dropped by agents. I've seen Victoria's name come up there with some disturbing frequency." We spent the next 2 hours going through Bethany's documentation and making a list of potential witnesses. By the time we finished, we had 7 names of writers who'd had their careers damaged by Victoria's interference, plus Amber Lee's insider testimony about the agency's practices. "There's one more thing," Bethany said as we prepared to leave. "Your mother visited me after Victoria dropped me as a client. She came to my house uninvited, said she was concerned about the stress I might be under, suggested that perhaps I'd misunderstood Victoria's intentions. She was very kind, very maternal, but underneath it there was a threat. She implied that if I spoke publicly about what Victoria had done, there could be legal consequences for me. She said Victoria had powerful friends in the industry who could make sure I never published anything." The revelation hit hard. My mother hadn't just been passively enabling Victoria. She'd been actively protecting her, intimidating victims into silence, participating in the cover-up. The woman who'd taught me to read, who'd encouraged my childhood stories, had transformed into an enforcer for my sister's cruelty. "Did she threaten anyone else?" I asked. "I don't know for certain, but one of the other writers mentioned receiving a similar visit from an older woman claiming to be concerned about the writer's well-being. We should ask the others when we contact them. I left the cafe with Bethany's folder and a growing sense that I'd only begun to understand the scope of what Victoria had built. This wasn't just professional jealousy or sibling rivalry. It was a systematic operation to control and destroy anyone Victoria perceived as competition, with my mother serving as an accomplice who cleaned up the damage and silenced the victims. My phone rang as I reached my car. Julia from the writing group. Emma, where are you? We're all at Nathan's place. Something's happened. Victoria posted something on social media about you, and it's going viral, but not in a good way. I drove to Nathan's house with my heart hammering, Bethany's folder on the passenger seat like evidence in a murder trial. The writing group had assembled in his living room, laptops open, phones out, all of them looking at screens with expressions ranging from anger to disbelief. Julia handed me her phone without a word. Victoria's Instagram post filled the screen, a carefully curated image of her sitting in her pristine office with a bookshelf backdrop that screamed literary credibility. The caption made my blood run cold. It breaks my heart to share this, but family means telling hard truths even when it hurts. My sister Emma's book release has been surrounded by controversy, and I feel I owe it to readers and the writing community to be transparent. Emma's manuscript was repeatedly rejected by legitimate agents and publishers for valid reasons concerning originality and quality. When I tried to give her honest professional feedback, she accused me of sabotage. The small press that eventually published her work has been known to use questionable marketing tactics, including purchasing fake reviews and manipulating sales numbers. I watched my sister's launch event dissolve into chaos because I couldn't stay silent while she misled people about her success. I love Emma, but enabling delusion helps no one. I hope she gets the help she needs to separate reality from the fantasy she's constructed. To any aspiring writers reading this, please know that real success comes from craft, humility, and working within the industry's established standards, not from shopping manuscripts to vanity presses and manufacturing controversy for attention. The post had been up for 3 hours and already had over 2,000 comments. Victoria had tagged multiple literary organizations, book bloggers, and writing influencers. She'd crafted it perfectly, positioning herself as the reluctant truth-teller, the concerned sister forced to speak out, while painting me as delusional and Beacon Press as fraudulent. She's claiming Claire's sales numbers were fabricated, David from the writing group said, his voice tight with anger. Look at the comments. People are actually believing this. They're saying the whole launch was staged, that you hired actors to create drama for publicity. Rachel pulled up another screen. It gets worse. Someone claiming to be a former Beacon Press employee just commented saying the company is under investigation for financial irregularities. The account was created today, obviously fake, but people are retweeting it. Lisa showed me Twitter, where Victoria's post had been screenshotted and shared across multiple platforms. Book Twitter was divided, some defending me based on the launch incident they'd witnessed or heard about, others questioning whether Victoria might be right about manufactured controversy. The hashtag had shifted from supportive to suspicious. She's not just attacking you, Nathan said quietly. She's trying to destroy your publisher's reputation so thoroughly that your book gets pulled from distribution. If she can make Beacon Press look fraudulent, retailers might return stock, cancel orders, refuse to carry anything from that publisher. She's trying to kill your book by killing your publisher. I called Marcus Reeves immediately. He answered on the second ring, already aware of the social media explosion. I've been documenting everything, he said. Screenshots, timestamps, the works. This is defamation, Emma. She's made specific false claims about you and your publisher that are damaging your reputation and business relationships. The fake employee comment is particularly actionable. We can trace that account, prove it's connected to her, and demonstrate malicious intent. How fast can you move on this? I can file for an emergency injunction by tomorrow morning, force her to take down the post and issue a retraction. But Emma, that's reactive. I think we need to go on offense. It's time to contact the Association of Authors representatives with the evidence we've been gathering. What Victoria just did, publicly attacking a published author and making false claims about a legitimate press, that's the kind of behavior that gets agents investigated and potentially expelled from their professional organization. Do it, I said. File everything. I'm done playing defense. I hung up and looked at my writing group, these people who'd supported my work for years, who'd read terrible first drafts and celebrated small victories with me. I need to ask you something. Would any of you be willing to go on record about what you witnessed at the launch? About what Victoria actually said versus what she's claiming now? Already done, Julia said. She turned her laptop around. She'd written a detailed account of the launch, including timestamps, direct quotes from Victoria's tirade, and photographs she'd taken of Claire's phone displaying the real sales data. I posted it an hour ago with the hashtag. It's getting traction, but we need more voices. The problem is Victoria has industry credibility and a huge following. We're just writers without platforms. Not all of us, David said slowly. My partner works at Powell's. They have security footage of the entire event. The store keeps recordings for insurance purposes. If we can get access to that video, it proves exactly what Victoria said and how Claire responded with actual data. Nathan was already calling someone. I know the event coordinator at Powell's. We taught together before she switched careers. Let me see if she can help. While Nathan worked on getting the security footage, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a defensive explanation or an emotional plea, but a clear factual statement about what had happened at my launch and what I discovered about Victoria's pattern of sabotaging writers. I included the names of other victims who'd agreed to speak, mentioned the evidence being compiled, and announced that legal action was being pursued against my sister for professional misconduct and defamation. Are you sure you want to post that? Rachel asked, reading over my shoulder. Once you do, there's no taking it back. This becomes a public war. She made it public when she tried to destroy me at my own book launch, I replied. She escalated it by posting lies to her 50,000 followers. I'm just telling the truth. I hit publish and watched the post go live. Within minutes, comments started appearing. Some supportive, some skeptical, but all of them engaged. The narrative Victoria had tried to create was being challenged by my version of events. Then Claire called. Emma, I need you to come to the office right now. We've been getting calls all afternoon from retailers asking if Victoria's claims are true, if our sales numbers are legitimate. Our distributor is threatening to suspend orders until this gets resolved. We need to hold a press conference, present the actual data publicly, and we need you there to tell your story. When? Tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. I'm inviting media, book industry journalists, representatives from the AAR, anyone who can witness us providing transparent documentation of everything. We're going to open our books, show the sales records, prove beyond any doubt that your book is a genuine success and that Victoria's accusations are false. After I hung up, Bethany called. I saw your post. I'm ready to go public with my story too. Kevin O'Brien just contacted me, he's also willing to speak. We've been talking with the others, and we want to coordinate our statements. If Victoria thinks she can bury one writer, let's show her what happens when she attacks an entire community. The evening transformed into a war room. Nathan's living room filled with laptops, documents, and writers who'd been silent for too long. We drafted statements, compiled evidence, coordinated timing. Amber Lee sent over internal files from Sterling and Associates showing Victoria's pattern of misconduct with clients. Marcus worked on legal filings. Claire prepared financial documentation that would prove Beacon Press's legitimacy and my book's authentic success. Around midnight, Nathan's doorbell rang. I answered it to find my mother standing on the porch, her expression strange and unreadable. We need to talk, she said. Victoria doesn't know I'm here. Please, Emma, let me explain. I almost closed the door, but something in her face stopped me. Not the maternal concern she'd shown Bethany when intimidating her into silence, but something rawer, almost like fear. You have 5 minutes, I said, not inviting her inside. She glanced at the cars in the driveway, the lights on in every room, the visible gathering of people through the windows. How many of them are writers Victoria hurt? Enough to matter. Why are you here, Mom? Because Victoria is planning something worse than a social media post. She called me tonight, told me she's contacted several major publishers claiming you plagiarized your book from an unpublished manuscript she has in her files. She's going to present it as her intellectual property, say you stole it from her agency's slush pile. The accusation was so audacious it took my breath away. I wrote that book over 3 years. I have dated drafts going back to the first chapter one ever wrote. I have my writing group's notes from every version. That's easily disprovable. She knows that. She's counting on the accusation being enough to create doubt, to make retailers and libraries pull your book until the plagiarism claim is investigated. By the time you prove it's false, the momentum will be dead. Your book will be remembered for the controversy, not the content. My mother's voice cracked. She showed me the manuscript she's going to use. Emma, she didn't write it. She copied your early drafts, changed enough details to claim originality, and backdated the file metadata to make it look like she wrote it first. You're telling me Victoria is about to commit fraud to destroy my career, and you came here to warn me. Why would you do that after everything you've done to help her? My mother looked at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before, genuine remorse mixed with recognition. Because I saw the folder that woman left in your car. The one from Bethany Morrison. I waited outside the cafe, wanted to talk to you, saw you come out with those documents. I followed you here and sat in my car for 2 hours trying to decide if I should come to the door. Then Victoria called with her plan, and I realized I'd been helping a monster destroy innocent people, including my own daughter. I let my mother inside, and she sat at Nathan's kitchen table surrounded by the writers she'd helped Victoria silence. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Bethany stared at her with unconcealed anger, but remained quiet as my mother pulled out her phone and showed us text messages from Victoria detailing the plagiarism scheme. She's planning to file a complaint with the Publishers Association tomorrow morning, right before your press conference, my mother said. She's timed it so the accusation drops while you're trying to defend yourself from the first round of lies. Multiple attacks from multiple directions overwhelm your ability to respond. She learned that strategy from some crisis management seminar she took last year. Marcus took screenshots of everything, his legal mind already working through implications. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, witness tampering if she tries to prevent Emma from defending herself, and potentially criminal defamation. The backdated files alone constitute falsifying evidence. Mrs. Collins, are you willing to testify about what Victoria told you? My mother looked at me, not at Marcus. I'll testify to everything. The writers she's destroyed, the intimidation I participated in, all of it. I can't undo what I've done, but I can stop being part of it. Emma, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to make sure Victoria can't hurt anyone else. Why now? I asked. You've enabled her for years. You threatened Bethany, you called my publisher trying to sabotage my marketing, you chose her over me at the launch. What changed? I heard her on the phone tonight talking to her boss at the agency. She was laughing about how she destroyed your launch, how she'd turned your success into a scandal, how she'd done the same thing to 6 other writers this year alone. She called it sport, Emma. Ruining people's dreams was entertainment to her. And I realized she wasn't my daughter anymore, if she ever was. She's become something cruel that I helped create by never saying no, never drawing a line, always defending her no matter what damage she caused. Nathan spoke up, his teacher voice cutting through the tension. If you're serious about helping, we need access to Victoria's home office. The files she's planning to use as fake evidence, we need the originals to prove they're forgeries. Can you get us in there? My mother nodded slowly. I still have a key from when I used to water her plants. She's at a publishing dinner downtown tonight, won't be home until late. But if we're caught, she'll know I betrayed her. You already did by coming here, Bethany said coldly. Might as well finish the job. An hour later, I stood in Victoria's pristine apartment overlooking the Willamette River, my mother disabling the security system while Marcus and a private investigator he'd called documented everything. Victoria's home office was a shrine to her success, framed deals on the walls, photos with famous authors, awards from industry organizations. But in her desk drawer, we found the manufactured evidence. The manuscript she planned to claim as her own was there, printed and bound, with a fake copyright registration form dated 2 years before I'd even started writing my book. But Victoria had made mistakes. The copyright form used a website template that hadn't existed until 6 months ago. The printer metadata on the manuscript pages showed they'd been created last week. And most damning, she'd kept a folder labeled Emma Contingency Plan, containing printed emails where she discussed stealing my concept with someone whose name was redacted. She documented her own crime, the investigator said, photographing everything. This is enough to destroy her career and possibly put her in prison. The question is whether you want to go that far. I thought about Bethany's stolen memoir, Kevin O'Brien's derailed career, the 7 other writers we'd identified as victims, the countless more who probably suffered in silence. I thought about the writer I might have become if Victoria had supported instead of sabotaged me, if my mother had protected instead of enabled. I want her to face every consequence she's earned, I said. Legal, professional, all of it. The press conference the next morning was standing room only. Claire had rented a venue near Powell's, invited every media outlet that covered publishing, and arranged for the Association of Authors representatives to send observers. I sat at a table with Claire, Marcus, and 3 other writers Victoria had harmed, our evidence compiled into binders that would be distributed to journalists after the presentation. Victoria arrived 10 minutes before we were scheduled to start, my mother beside her, both of them taking seats in the front row. Victoria looked confident, probably expecting her plagiarism accusation to derail our defense. She didn't know my mother had already given us everything we needed to counter her next attack. Claire spoke first, presenting authenticated sales data from multiple sources proving my book's legitimate success. She showed contracts, payment records, retailer orders, everything necessary to demonstrate that Beacon Press operated with complete transparency and integrity. Then she played the security footage from Powell's. The video was devastating. Victoria's tirade was captured in full, every cruel word, every false accusation, the champagne glass hitting the floor. But more importantly, it showed Claire's response, her phone screen visible as she displayed real-time sales numbers to the crowd, the data clear and verifiable. The footage proved Victoria had lied about what happened that night, and by extension, cast doubt on everything else she'd claimed. Then it was my turn. I stood at the microphone and told my story. Not with anger or emotion, but with the calm clarity of someone presenting facts. I detailed Victoria's rejection of my manuscript followed by her attempts to shop it negatively to publishers. I described finding out she'd actually loved the book but had sabotaged it because I'd signed with another publisher. I presented Bethany's testimony about stolen content, Kevin's about strategic delays, Amber's about the agency's knowledge of Victoria's misconduct. Finally, I revealed Victoria's plan to falsely accuse me of plagiarism, showing the manufactured evidence we'd found in her apartment, the metadata proving the documents had been created recently, the emails discussing her contingency plan. Marcus provided legal analysis explaining how Victoria's actions constituted fraud, defamation, and potentially criminal misconduct. The room erupted. Journalists shouted questions. Representatives from the AAR requested copies of everything immediately. And Victoria sat frozen in her seat, her face pale as she realized the trap had closed around her. She tried to leave, but Marcus had tipped off investigators from the state licensing board who'd been waiting outside. They had questions about her business practices, her treatment of clients, the complaints that had been filed by multiple writers. Her boss from Sterling and Associates was already waiting in the hallway, termination papers prepared. My mother approached me as the chaos swirled around us. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "For all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it." "You're right, it doesn't fix anything," I replied. "But testifying against her, giving us the evidence, that's a start. You have a lot to make up for, and it's going to take more than one confession to rebuild any kind of trust." She nodded, tears finally appearing. "I know. But I'll spend however long it takes trying." 6 weeks later, my book hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Victoria had been expelled from the AAR, fired from her agency, and was facing civil lawsuits from multiple writers as well as a criminal investigation into fraud. The literary community had rallied around the victims she'd harmed, with established authors offering mentorship and support to rebuild the careers Victoria had tried to destroy. I stood in Powell's again, this time for a properly celebrated success, surrounded by my writing group, by Nathan and Julia and all the people who'd believed in my work when my own family hadn't. Claire announced that we'd sold foreign rights in 12 countries, that a producer wanted to option the book, that the success was only beginning. My mother attended from the back of the room, quiet and respectful of the boundaries I'd set. We were speaking again, carefully, with the understanding that rebuilding trust would be a long process requiring consistent action, not just words. She'd started therapy, was working to understand how she'd enabled Victoria's cruelty for so many years. As I signed books for a line that stretched through the store, I thought about how close I'd come to believing Victoria's lies, to accepting that my work was worthless trash nobody would buy. One moment of public cruelty had accidentally exposed years of private sabotage, and that exposure had freed not just me, but every writer Victoria had silenced. The pen moved across title pages, my signature becoming easier with each inscription. My name on my book, my words reaching readers who connected with the story I'd fought so hard to tell. Victoria had tried to steal this future from me, but she'd underestimated the power of community, evidence, and the determination of someone who'd finally decided to fight back. Outside, Portland's evening light painted the bookstore windows gold. My second novel was already drafted, ready for Claire's editorial notes. A life built on authentic success stretched ahead, no longer shadowed by family sabotage or manufactured doubt. Victoria had said nobody would buy my trash. 50,000 readers had proved her catastrophically wrong, and that number grew every day. The last person in the signing line was Bethany, holding both my book and a manuscript of her own. "I'm querying agents again," she said. "Real ones this time. Your publisher suggested a few names, people she trusts. You're going to make it," I told her, meaning it. "Your story deserves to be told." She smiled, the wariness finally gone from her eyes. "So did yours. Thank you for being brave enough to tell it." I walked out of Powell's that night with my brother, my friends, my community of writers who'd refused to let one person's cruelty define our worth. The city lights reflected off the river, and somewhere in the distance, someone was probably reading my book, connecting with words I'd written in coffee shops and late nights, words Victoria had tried to bury but that had found their audience anyway. Success wasn't just about sales numbers or bestseller lists, though those were gratifying. It was about proving that truth and documentation could defeat manipulation, that speaking up could inspire others to do the same, that families built on toxicity could be left behind in favor of communities built on support. My phone buzzed with a message from Claire. Pre-orders for the second book were already strong based on early buzz. The reading world was waiting to see what I'd write next. Not because of controversy or drama, but because they'd connected with my words and wanted more. Victoria had gambled everything on my silence and lost spectacularly. I'd gambled everything on my voice and won. And that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.